Well, we're back with the scoreboard, talking about issues that affect sports in the field, outside of the field, around the field. If it's sports, you'll find it all here. And we were going to talk about the Carabao Cup and also the FKF results. But let's talk about the FKF results first, and then we introduce you to our guests for this segment to talk about a couple of things that we think are not going very right. There were a couple of matches that were played over the weekend, and some very interesting results. After a very big talking, Kakamega Homeboys chairman said how they were going to annihilate Gor Mahia. They ended up in a draw. Now, I don't know whether that's annihilating, but that's a big one for the Kakamega side. But then the Kakamega side lost in a midweek match, 2-0 against the KCB side. So I know now it's a time, tone down the talk and walk the talk on the field. That's more. Even Shabana is learning that. Muranga Seeds are learning that as well. But let's get the details of the results of what happened last weekend. Ken, you have them, don't you?
Yes, I do. So AFC finally managed to find their scoring boots. They drew 2-2 with the police.
The coach is being hounded for that. They want him out for that, you know. Tom Juma is in really
leading 2-1, I think, until the 80th minute, but then they conceded. Tusker resumed their winning ways, beat Mohoroni 1-0. Talanta was on the receiving end of Bidco 3-1. Shabana is facing life reality.
So Bidco was one of the biggest scores then in that weekend.
Yeah, it was 3-1.
Yeah.
Shabana, in their own home, they lost to Sharks 0-1.
Yeah, Shabana will also have to tone down on the talk and walk the talk now and know the rigors of the Premier League. It's not that easy, yeah.
And the new boys as well, Muranga Sales at home, they lost to Posta.
They were on top of the league. Yeah, you were very happily touting them as the league leaders
after two matches. They were on top of the league and they were talking very badly. Okay. The Bankers and the Watermen of Bandari drew 0-0. Okay. Gor couldn't find a way past the Homeboys and
they drew. Okay,
they drew
great.
1-8. But Ulinzi beats of Paka 1-0, and City Stars also got the better of Nzoia Sugar 2-1.
Now, talking about City Stars, that's why we'll bring in Patrick Korir, who's the CEO of City Stars. It's very good to see you. And a couple of things are disturbing us. First of all, City Stars and their performance. And I know you have a reason for this. You're saying it's only the third or fourth match.
I was waiting for him to skip that.
I wouldn't skip.
So you're going to pick that up.
We came from behind to win that game. So
you did. Okay.
Credit.
Well done. All right. Now, Korir, it's very nice to see you here. But we first of all want you to have your take on the women's team and winning. Now that there is a provision, actually, that you must have a women's team as well. Every club must have a women's team. You partnered with some team as well. Yes. What do you make of what we have in the national team? Let's start from there.
It's a very good team, full of potential. And I think for you to appreciate what happened the other day is that you have to go back in time. In a similar competition in 2006, same Cameroon beat Kenya 5-0 away. Now remember, this time it was 1-0.
Just one, yes.
Now when they came to Kenya, they beat that team 4-0. Now this time they were beaten. So that just tells you, a few years later, what can happen. Back then, it was the first time that the national women's team was playing.
Okay, so there's good progress, football. You could say, yeah?
So we're talking about what? 2006 till now, some 18 years later.
Yes, yeah.
It's a long time to note the progress, but it's good time anyway.
But the team is very good.
I want us to move on very quickly because there are two things that I really want us to talk about here. First of all, the AFCON. You as a club, you as a soccer person and a man who's very well versed in soccer business. You know, there's a business of football.
Yes.
There is what you see on the field, but there's a business behind it.
Exactly.
What is the business aspect of this bid that you think we should take?
It's massive. The economic opportunities are massive. And I think just look at, for example, let's look at Egypt, 2019. They hosted the AFCON. They took home $83 million in hosting that. That's the money that they made. So there's money to be made. Cameroon, 2021, they put in resources worth $895 million to create 4 new stadia and to revamp 2 others.
But you have to put in the money.
So you have to put in the money.
Make the money.
Ouagadougou,
I was looking at what was there, and the Standard broke it down very nicely.
Yeah, very nicely.
And said, with an estimated budget of 12 billion, that's in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, they expected to be big. Remember, now we read our budgets on the same day, yeah? So this allocation will be done on the same day, read on the same day, yeah? And the Gabonese government spent 72.2 billion to host the 2017 AFCON edition of this same event. Cameroon spent almost 130 billion to stage it. So you've got to put money in it, yes?
You have to put money. You have to go back in time, 1998, Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. They didn't have hotels, they didn't have roads. But because of hosting the AFCON, all those things were done. So you see, it's a one-time thing to do it, but then think about the future, what it does.
Burkina Faso was a joint bid. Burkina Faso went on their own, didn't they?
They went on their own.
They went on their own. In fact,
but just hosting that Bernard, it changed the.
In fact, some of the hotels that we were sleeping in were actually not yet complete. They didn't complete the infrastructure, but they hosted the event. It just like you're saying, it changes the economic face of a country.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Now, you as Nairobi City Stars, when you go to a city to play, how much do you spend there? Like, what is the basic? Because that's the only way we can understand then what it means for other countries to come and lodge.
If I took Nairobi City Stars to Kakamega, for example, that is a budget of about 300,000.
Okay, so you've got
ground book hotels, there is transport. Okay, the transport, I'm taking a bus from Nairobi, but once I land there, my meals, my accommodation, everything else I'm buying is from there, the water and everything. So that's just in a very small scale. But if you go across Africa, you multiplicate those figures and you leave that money behind. Now, if you're going to host AFCON, 24 teams, you need to have...
It's going to be the expanded version, remember?
Exactly.
Yes.
To be the expanded version, yeah. So you can imagine all those teams that are going to come here. You can imagine what it does to the economy of Nairobi, because 2 of the pitches will be here in Nairobi. It's massive. A lot of money remains. And remember, it's never really about the football. When they're not playing, what do? They go to the national parks. They go to Masai Mara. They spend in hotels. All that money remains behind.
That's the time you see Ken and I also dressing up in Masai attire.
Exactly.
With the hair in ochre and all that, and jumping up and down trying to make some little
we find you chasing superstars in
Let me
Masai
talk to
Mara.
Captain here. Bungei, wait. I want to talk to Bungei. Bungei, when you are running in a country, how many days do you land there before? What do you do? What do you spend before the running day, and after the running day, what happens?
Okay, there are two situations here. We have got those races that you just go like a day or 2 days before, but then when it comes to World Championships, most of the time you would go a week before.
Even the Olympics.
Yeah, even the Olympics, almost like 2-3 weeks that you have got to be there. So you can imagine that if we will be hosting a number of teams, they will be here for some time. I believe that even some other teams may decide to come and train here, so that at least they
acclimatization must be done.
Yeah. So
depending on the groupings, because when the groups are made, then you will know who's in Kenya, who's in Tanzania, who's in Uganda. They will have to come earlier to acclimatize. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And Bernard, if you may allow me, because there's something that is very interesting for me here, and it puts me maybe to ask Korir.
Yes.
You know, whether there is value for money. I ask this question because if you remember Athens, immediately it was done, it became a white elephant. Now, is there real value for money?
And not only in Athens, we are even talking about football stadium. Even in Kenya, the Kasarani Stadium almost became a white elephant. And in many other countries, even in West Africa, even in Central, even in Congo, there are big stadia that are not being used for anything. So again, it's a good question.
And that is when I ask for...
What benefit is there in these structures after?
I think the benefit is back to the grassroots, because when these facilities are put in place, and as you say, those who came to use it, they all leave. But what happens? The biggest impediment to the growth of our game right now is lack of infrastructure. We have so many leagues that trickle all the way down, but where do we go and play our football? We can't. Just the other day, there's an announcement that Kasarani and Nyaok shut down. So what are we supposed to do? It means now, Bernard, we have to start looking for venues, either in Homa Bay, elsewhere. The Gusii Stadium was shut down for renovations. Shabana have to take the games to Homa Bay. So you see, but now, the moment there's infrastructure, even the lower leagues can use it. If you watch the Starlets game the other day, well and good we won, but did you look at the surface?
I saw it.
Did you see that?
It was horrible. It was horrible.
But had we lost, trust me, Bernard,
it's because it's being used for other purposes as well.
We would have blamed the surface. That's what happened. So for the growth of our game, you need to have good surfaces so you can grow the game. So it may be a dead elephant, a white elephant at the end of the day. However, if we use it locally, it will grow our game.
Okay.
You know, Bernard, still on the same topic. You see, other than building a stadium, stadiums that the matches will take place, we also have to build good training grounds. And remember, these training grounds have to be sealed because you don't want, for security purposes. So we're expecting high names, high profile footballers. So those stadiums, as he is saying, those training grounds can then be used for the lower leagues.
Exactly.
I can assure you, I can assure you that the focus right now will be to refurbish the existing infrastructure. And I can tell you, Ken, there will be no building of a training facility. Instead, we will use the small stadia or the school stadia for training. I'll tell you something that I've seen in Ethiopia, for example, that all universities, public universities, have a stadium that can actually host an international game. In as much as there are rules for that, it's big enough, it's got enough space and all that. Those small stadia that were being built, like the Woodley Stadium, the City Stadium, the one in Mombasa, the small ones are the ones that are used for training.
Also,
so they need to be